Stephen has launched and sold multiple businesses and invests in them and sits on boards. And you are constantly leaning into new ideas and curious about things. And what he just told you is that the way that he gets out of the ideation stage and the I should start a business stage, or maybe I'm going to get into this collaborative workspace business until community, isn't that what it's called? Until community, is he goes to Instagram and creates an Instagram account with the business name of the business he hasn't even started yet. Before the business plan, before the other stuff, this is what he's talking about.
If you look at I've never written a business plan in my life. I don't know where people get this business plan stuff from. I've never written one in my life, and I don't intend to start now. If you look at my phone, which is in the room behind you, you'll see a bunch of Instagram pages for businesses that I'm yet to launch, because I just want to secure the Instagram page. And I also see that as step one of setting an intention, which is the easiest step one can make towards the direction I want to travel.
So to the banker listening, you opening your mouth and telling Mel Robbins, that was your step one.
I just want
right?
people
And
to,
then step two is the next thing. This is how you started in social media. So when you were 21, right? Weren't you 21 years old?
Yeah.
And so would you please give that example of how you just got started? You made yourself a promise, 7 p.m., 8 p.m.
What posting?
Yes.
Ah, okay.
You see what I mean? Like, this is an example of that.
Yeah, I mean, so on the personal brand side of things and the content creation and the storytelling side of things, I created an obligation with myself where at 7 p.m. every single day, I would write a 140 character quote or make a video based on what had happened to me that day. And it's, of all the things I've done in my life, it is the single highest yielding, most valuable habit or discipline I ever instilled, because not only is that the thing that cured the trauma I had around relationships with my parents, because at 7 p.m. every day, I had to look down on how I'd behaved that day, the notes I'd taken, the avoidant behavior I demonstrated in my relationships. I had to summarize it, and then I had to teach it. But also it improved my communication and my writing skills. There's this guy called Richard Fryman, who's this American psychologist who came up with this technique, and they call it the Fryman Technique. They say it's the ultimate way to learn and to develop. The idea is you learn something, you then condense it down to the understanding of a 10-year-old as if you had to teach it to a 10-year-old. You then deliver it to the world, teach it to the 10-year-old, and then based on the 10-year-old's reaction, you then go to the top. And the whole principle here is your ability to summarize a concept correlates to your ability to actually understand it. I was doing that. I've done that for 6-7 years now. That meant that all of my experience, you know, people say that people use the word wise, or they use these words that they describe me as being older. It's purely because I feel like I've got more wisdom out of every day that I've lived because of this introspection. It's the single greatest hack that I could give to any young person or old person in the world, is this habit of introspection and teaching in some regard.
So walk us through how to do it.
What I would do, if you want to do it the Steve Bartlett way that I did it.
Yes, I do.
Is, I get it, I'm going to say something here. Create a Instagram page or a Twitter account, whatever you want to do.
Okay.
Don't need followers, don't need to tell anybody it exists. And as you go through your day, keep notes in your phone. So you have an argument with your friend, you respond negatively to a situation, someone cuts you off in traffic, you feel something. When you have these feelings, write them down in the notes of your phone. And at 7 p.m. every single night, 7 p.m. every single night, all I want you to do is to fit that experience into the confines of a 280 character tweet or post, and I want you to post it. And I can't tell you that cycle of having an experience, summarizing it down to its essence, which is the true definition of understanding, and then posting out and sharing it with the world. And step 4 is not so important, which is getting some feedback on what you said, drives you forward more, I think, in key areas of your life, helps you understand your cycles, and does the hardest thing, which I think any of us can achieve, which is heightens your self-awareness, which has been this really elusive thing on the podcast that I've asked people over and over again. How does one increase their self-awareness? And I think this is the easiest way to do it in a reliable way. I remember that day.
It sounds like a lot of work.
Oh, it's the easiest thing. And I think it's remarkably enjoyable. I would not be in a relationship now at 31 years old, and I've been in the relationship for 4 years, super happy, gonna propose any minute now.
Does she know that? Do we have to hold this?
No, I don't care. She
What's
knows.
that?
I say it a lot. So
okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
If I hadn't done that, because there was this cycle going on that I was a total puppet to, and I didn't know the puppet master was my childhood trauma. And I was just doing it every day. I would be interested in someone, I'd pursue them, they'd show interest in me, I'd run off. I didn't understand the cycle. And then one day in the notes of my phone, I wrote, connecting two dots, which is much easier to do when you're looking down on a piece of paper. I wrote, kind of feels like, referring to the feeling in my chest that I got when this girl said she wanted to be in a relationship with me, how I felt when I watched my father sat there and my mum shouting at him. The minute the girl said she wanted to be in a relationship with me, I felt like a bird trapped in a cage. And the first bird trapped in a cage I ever knew was my father. And I go, oh, okay. I learned love. I learned the model of love from watching those two go at war. And it's ingrained in me now. And I'm just playing out the cycle.
You know what I want you to do? I want you to stop saying that.
What?
That you learned the model of love.
Yeah.
Because you didn't. You learned the model of misery.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, because they're certainly not happy.
Are they together?
They are, which is crazy. They're like co-inhabiting now. I believe because they've got no other friends and they're at a certain age, they've just made the decision to cohabit, which is, not something I'd wish for myself, but.
And what's your relationship like with them?
With my dad, it's never been affectionate, but it's good. With my mum, it's complicated. It's very complicated.
How so?
I still think she's got some issues with money, which is difficult when your child now has a lot of it.
Why, does she ask you for money?
Yeah. And I will
Does she still have a gambling problem?
I'll buy anything. I still think her sweet tooth is starting businesses that aren't going to succeed. So I will buy them. My deal with my parents is I'll buy you anything you need for your house, holidays, health, whatever. Food, I pay for their food every week, you name it, dentistry bills, whatever. But I will not pay to start a business for my mum because I watched for 25 years her start 25 businesses and I watched the impact it had on the entire family. So I'll pay for everything else, but I won't start a business. Unfortunately, my mum only wants one thing. She doesn't want the Christmas presents. She doesn't want me to pay for anything else. She wants me to pay for her to start businesses. And
well, if she's smart like you, she'll just sell the shit that you buy her and use the money to fund her businesses.
I think she's tried that a few times and I clocked onto it. So, but it's an interesting subject because sometimes in life there's someone, usually family or a friend, where you have to say, I love you, but I also love myself. And my number one responsibility is protecting myself. And now as this 31-year-old adult that's about to start a family of my own, I now have the choice whether I let this cycle repeat itself. And letting the cycle repeat itself would be doing the easier thing, which is just sending this individual money. So I said to my brothers, and it's a rule I have for myself is I have to have a boundary even against my mum. And
especially, honestly.
Especially.
And as a mother, I personally feel that it is really important that kids have boundaries with their parents.
It's the thing people struggle with in terms of interpersonal relationships the most, which is that's my blood, that is my mother or my father. It causes a huge amount of internal conflict. And it goes back to that old plane analogy where you've got to put the oxygen mask on yourself before you put it on the child or anyone else. And that's what I do in my relationship with my mother. I have a boundary, and I've had that boundary.
I think it's cruel not to have boundaries.
Cruel.
Because otherwise what happens is people continue to behave in ways that bother you.
Yeah.
And you don't let them know.
Yeah.
Or you don't express a boundary, but then you sit and judge and are angry at them. And so I think it's more compassionate and kinder to actually tell people how you feel and what you need and where their needs and your ability to support them begin and end.
I completely agree. And I think in doing so, I'm inadvertently giving my mother an opportunity to learn a lesson that I think she's not been able to learn because for 30 years, my father has propped up a situation to his detriment, him losing all of his money, smashed up house, verge of bankruptcy, which she hasn't learned. And neither has he, by the way. I've got so many examples in my life. My best friend was 32 years old. I was 25. I was living in a mansion. He was staying in my spare room. One day I say to him, I say, bro, I love you. And he talks about this. I say, you gotta go. And he, at 32 years old, my best friend on earth, had to go back to his childhood bedroom in Grimsby. And it was painful. It was sad. And 4 years later, he's a millionaire living in Dubai. And I've got another friend one of my best friends who listens to this podcast all the time, who was at my company and he was slacking and I fired him. And I sat in the room, cried with him as I fired him. The guy is a CEO now. He has an incredibly successful company. He's had more money than he ever has. Painful getting fired by your best friend. Painful getting kicked out the spare room. It was honestly, in hindsight, the greatest gift I ever gave either of them. And what I was robbing them of by propping them up was honestly unfair. And so they had lessons they needed to learn. And I tell you, they learned them.
You know what's interesting about this is that we call it that we're being kind to people and that we're taking care of them, when actually you are helping somebody so that you don't have to deal with the uncomfortable feelings of telling them no.
Yeah.
And when we do that, we rob people of the possibility of who they could become.
100%. They're unrecognizable. It baffles me. Unrecognizable. And they thank me. I apologize because I'm like, I shouldn't have let you stay in the spare room for 2 years. You know?
Wow.
So.
Wow. I feel like I have a masterclass in a million things from you.
Oh, you're very kind.
What I love about listening to your podcast and just getting to spend time with you is I really love how you have the courage and the bravery to challenge what is so in order to build a life and build businesses and make decisions that really empower you. Like, it's so obvious, and yet I think none of us really take the time to stop and go, wait a minute. There are so many things that we do in life that we just blindly do without stopping to ask the question. And I just want to thank you because there were so many things that made me stop and not only think, but more importantly, start asking myself different questions.
Thank you. One of my friends said to me back then, they said, you're either going to be a millionaire in jail. I was that desperate.
To leave a situation that you know isn't right for you. I think that is the hardest decision on the planet for most people,